Richard Fitzgerald. This is Dubai Works, where we interview the business leaders making a difference in this great city.
That business with scalability was very interesting to me.
I like building something that has legacy.
So we're well into Ramadan 2023 and people are getting used to now the reduced working hours in the region, watching lots of Ramadan shows. Media consumption is always higher at this time of the year, but also business goes on. The interest rates continue to rise globally, and in Egypt this week inflation is subsiding, but it's still there. Macro factors are at play, although job cuts are being done across the world, particularly about the tech giants. They continue to lay people off. Apart from their offices being affected in this region, the opposite is happening as people continue to invest in startups here. Hiring is abundant, and the performance and outlook on the GDP across the region, particularly in UAE and KSA, is positive for this year, and that's what we're seeing as well. It's a very active Q1 that we're just at the end of, and to that point, we have a promising and enthusiastic entrepreneur on the show today to talk about how he's building a social media network, a community-based network in Dubai and to expand elsewhere as well. Enjoy the conversation.
Hey guys, I'm Richard Fitzgerald. This is Dubai Works, where we interview the business leaders making a difference in this great city.
That business with scalability was very interesting to me.
I like building something that has legacy.
Welcome back to another episode of Dubai Works Business Podcast. Today we are joined by Rene Morgan. He is the COO and co-founder of Hayi app. It's a private social network for neighbourhoods in the UAE and serves as a way for communities to share local recommendations and keep up to date with local announcements, reunite with lost pets, buy and sell pre-loved goods, organise local meetups, and so much more. So Rene is a really passionate and intelligent, I would say, startup entrepreneur in the UAE, part of what's so exciting about the ecosystem at the moment. So we're going to hear all about his backstory and what Hayi have been up to, the community-based platforms in the UAE, and just the general ecosystem around what's happening, and then looking ahead to the future. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. Glad to be on the podcast.
And thanks for joining. So we had a good catch up at Step Conference recently. So it's nice to sit down and talk about it and share it with the public.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's not, Step Conference is great, but it's nice to also just have a private moment where we can, talk about things a bit more in depth and away from the hustle and bustle.
Yeah, it was. There's quite hustle bustle at conferences at the moment. So yeah, so how are things going? How's Hayi? Can you tell us a bit about, what's the elevator pitch? What's the platform?
Of course. I think you did a great job just now. But yeah, we're a hyperlocal social network. We're a neighbored application for your local community. So the real thing we're trying to build, or that what we're building, is an application where you sign up and you can connect with everyone and everything in your local area, right? Almost a super app for your local community. But at the core, we're a social network, so we want to connect people. We feel like in Dubai especially, but in general across the entire world, urbanized cities have become so disconnected on a neighborhood level. People don't really know their neighbors anymore. People don't say hi in the elevators. And we really want to bring back that sense of community. Now, aside from that, there are also other features. You can buy and sell on that platform with your neighbors in the surrounding area, find recommendations and discounts, and so much more. But yeah, like I said, the core is to connect people.
Core is to connect people. And Hayi comes from high, or is there another meaning to it?
So there are a couple of meanings actually, which we found out later on. But Hayi it's a nice word for saying hi, yes. But the original is Hayi, which means my neighborhood in Arabic.
Okay, amazing. So when did the company found, and what's been the journey so far?
Awesome. So the journey, we pretty much launched in our first neighborhood in 2021. Now, I came together with my co-founder and childhood friend, Chris Darnell. He's the CEO of the company. We go way back, went to primary school here in Dubai together. We were both born and raised here. And the idea really came just when COVID hit. we felt more could be done to connect local communities in Dubai in line with a smart city vision. And then Chris and I came up with the idea of a neighborhood application. And then parallel to that, we're seeing big successes abroad, particularly in the US and South Korea, of this phenomenon of neighborhood applications, hyperlocal social networks. In the US, you've got Nextdoor, which is listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and then you've got another unicorn in South Korea. But here in MENA, we really saw a blue ocean, and that really, made us take a step forward and kick this thing off. And beginning of 2021, we started in our first neighborhoods. And when you're starting a startup, you really have to validate the product, validate the USP, the pain point that you're trying to alleviate. And that's what we did in just a couple of neighborhoods. And then we went into fundraising. We grew a little bit more, and now we're here.
Okay, amazing. So was it a case of, let's see what's missing in the UAE, or was it more sort of, did you always want to be an entrepreneur, or was it more like you're kind of working in engineering or a tech background and you were able to code something that you think could work?
So my background is actually in VC, so finance VC. That's how I got in touch with a startup ecosystem. Maybe I'll just give a little bit of a background where I come from and how I got to this point. I was born and raised here in Dubai. Then I moved to Germany. I'm half German, half Egyptian. I did my schooling there, and then I went to South Africa to study economics and finance. And that's when I joined a VC in South Africa. Really fell in love with the entire idea of seeing tangible impact from a VC perspective when you're investing in startups, but also when you're actually building that product. I always say, if we look, if we look 10 years back, how did we order food? How did we get from point A to B? How did we watch movies? How did we listen to music? That all changed because of startups and VCs. So that's what I was always passionate about, really just building the products. Even though my background is in finance, I also went into banking afterwards here in Dubai. But that's how I got into the startup ecosystem.
And what's Chris's background?
Chris's background, so we complement each other quite well, thankfully. So his background is in sales and marketing, right? I come more from like a data point of view, obviously financial side, and Chris really, rocks the commercial side, the partnership side of things.
Yeah. And then how did you handle the tech? How did you go about building the product?
Oh, so we have a CTO, a great guy. So he built the engineering team for Twitter in India. So he's a social network specialist and an ad tech specialist, which really complements our entire skill set. And he's heading our tech team. So
it's all been plain sailing.
Well, I mean, you know how the startup ecosystem is, how the startup life cycle. There's highs and there's lows. You just have to go through it. And but in terms of the core team that we built, we're really happy. So we all complement each other, and I think it's really important when you're building a team to find people that don't think like you. You need excellent communication skills, but this is how you prevent large losses, missteps, by, complementing each other's skill set and having different perspectives on the founding team, for sure.
And so the launch in 2021, when did you guys, did you and Chris get together and say, hey, let's, we're both working, we both got careers, let's go and leave our careers and do a startup?
So this was, I think, during COVID time, right?
Yeah.
Just after COVID hit, that's when Chris already worked on like an initial MVP with an agency, and then we saw it working a little bit in one neighborhood, and then we said, okay, let's go all in on this. And then 2021 was when we launched in our first neighborhoods. We saw traction, so we saw people stay on the application, and really the number one metric we were following during this time was the retention rate. When you're launching a product, the key thing to really look at is, are you retaining your customers? You can get as many downloads as you want, but if you can't retain them, there's no point in growing that user base. So when we saw that the retention was really high, the 8-week retention, that's when we saw, okay, this is what we want to do. This is something we can grow. Let's raise our pre-seed round, and that's we raised a small pre-seed round of just around $300,000 in 2021. Got more of a tech team around our product, made an MVP version 2 basically. At the first iteration was just a social feed, but then we built on that with a pre-seed round.
And so going back to that time, what was the neighborhood that you started in?
So we started in Arabian Ranches, I believe. That's because that's where my co-founder's from.
And how did people stay on? What kept them on the app initially when it was just them joining? What kept them there at the start, and what gave you confidence that there was enough there for them?
So that's a great question, and you're asking the data guy here. So yeah, from a metric perspective, we could see people were just opening the app, multiple times every week just to see what's happening. And now and we could see that with the retention rate, and there's a measure called stickiness, how many of the monthly active users return on a weekly basis, very important for any network-based product. But from a qualitative aspect, really what I think was the unique selling point and the reason why we had such high retention rate was because of the hyper-localness of the application. People knew that there was a verified user base that is really just, maybe right next door to you, full of users that are just a couple of minutes walk, and knowing that everything that gets posted on the application is relevant. If it's an announcement, if it's a lost and found, if it's a recommendation, and plus it's a verified environment.
Yeah. Okay. So interesting. And, talk a little bit about, the features of the app. Like if I download it today, we mentioned it at the start, but what are people doing on the app at the moment, and how many people are, and what communities are you in now?
Perfect. So now taking a step back, our mission is to digitize the neighborhood ecosystem and all the entities within. Now, at the core, it's the neighbors. It's the residents that create the neighborhood. But we're also digitizing the community management aspect. So real estate developers can send out notices, and local businesses. Local businesses form SMEs and even private individuals that have home businesses. We wanted to connect all of those together. So at the core, we have a social feed, which is just like, similar to Facebook, I would say, likes, commenting. There's also a private messaging aspect. Bless you. Private messaging aspect to it. So neighbors can message each other. Now, obviously, there's, message requests, blocking features and all of that for privacy. And the other major feature is the marketplace. So people can list secondhand cars, furniture, whatever they want to sell, and they can choose to sell just to their community or nearby communities. So that gives them a bit of flexibility on how much they actually want to, drive, let's say, to buy or sell an item. And the third big feature is a local office section. So people can open that section and find businesses that are nearby, find businesses that are offering special discounts just for their community. Now, from a business perspective, so we have two users, right? We have the neighbor users and the business users. Business users are enabled to access communities that are most relevant to them. Geo-targeted advertising, essentially.
So how does the network effect work in the case of multiple communities? Because if you get people on from one community, they've no real interest, or they've no real benefit of being involved in another community if they don't live there. So you have to start all over again. So, whereas with social networks, it's kind of multiplies because you can be friends with everyone in any community or any country.
Yeah.
So does it work? Is it a different network effect?
That's actually an excellent point, and I see you're quite knowledgeable in this area to even ask this question. But 100%. So network effect amplifies and compounds when there's one big network. TikTok, for example, right? As the larger it grows, the more it exponentially grows. With neighborhood apps, Hayi as an example, but also Next Door and Dangan Market in South Korea and a couple in Europe, you're not dealing with one social network. You're dealing with 100 across the entire city. Now, there is some bleed over effect with the neighborhoods. So we have like a nearby neighborhoods feature where if you're just looking for a tennis buddy, you don't really mind if they're in the neighborhood next door, right? So there's a little bit of a bleed over effect into into the other neighborhoods. Plus the marketplace is also accessible on a wider degree. But yeah, that was the unique obstacle, I would say, for us, because we had to go into every single neighborhood in the beginning. And that was quite an interesting time. Just after COVID, we couldn't have events or anything. So we had to hustle our way into getting that first critical mass, I would say, a minimal viable network. And we had to do that 100 times across the city. So Chris and I, we went into communities, kind of guerrilla style. We put our T-shirts on and just collected trash in every single community. We went in, snuck in, I would say almost, and collected trash. And posting those photos and posting awareness of our initiative got quite a bit of traction on Facebook specifically.
So you posted this in the Facebook groups that you're picking up trash in those neighborhoods.
Yes, exactly. So initially we just wanted to raise awareness about what we're doing, and that turned out into a full-on recycling initiative. We didn't expect getting hundreds of comments on each of those posts. We want to join. We want to clean up trash as well. We want to do something for our neighborhood. So instead of just getting just a couple of downloads through or once of advertising whatever in an area, we got like 300, 400 downloads in a day in a community, and not just that, but we got users and people that actually wanted to join on this initiative, and that evolved down the line to even Demak and Nakhil reaching out to us, and together we organized a full-on recycling and cleanup drive initiative in JVC, in Discovery Gardens, and Palm Jumeirah as well. We partnered with BIA, which is also a recycling sustainability company. That was amazing. So Nakhil did a great job of organizing like a kids playing area. We went around, collected trash. The kids actually went to the recycling bins and made a game out of putting the right trash in the correct recycling holes, basically.
Fair enough. So super smart. So instead of putting a graphic on the Greens Facebook group saying download my app, you're putting pictures of you guys cleaning up the trash with your t-shirts on, and it's generating loads of comments because people in that targeted space have a vested interest in a clean neighborhood. Yeah. And then by default, it's getting downloads. However, you're not a recycling company. You're actually a social network which is trying to replace the place where you put the comments in the first place.
Yeah.
So, I trust, and I'm sure sustainability is part of values and part of what Hayi wants to do, but ultimately it was a growth hacking approach and quite a clever one.
Essentially, yeah. We had limited options what to do in the beginning, and I think if you go into any network-based products, they have quite an interesting life cycle. All of them at the beginning had to do something weird, had to growth hack their way. If I may give an example or one of the examples I like most is Tinder, right? Dating platforms are incredibly difficult to create. You have to balance out the genders, the location. There has to be same demographics as well, same age group, even same attractiveness level. Otherwise, people are not going to get matches. So that's why the dating industry really, really failed to get a good dating platform until Tinder came along. Well, I mean, if it's good or bad, I'll leave that to the viewers. But it's a successful company. What they did was they went to colleges. And they went to a college student and they asked a college student whose birthday it was on the weekend and said, we will host your birthday. We will provide the venue. We'll provide everything, DJ, music, and bouncers as well for free if every single one of your guests shows a filled out Tinder profile. And they're like, okay, cool. Okay, fine. We'll do it. 300, 400 kids, uni students in one university go to that event. And the next day, people would look at the Tinder app and like, okay, who did I miss yesterday? Who did I not speak to? And that solved so many problems for them. They didn't have to do any advertising. Yes, there were some expenditures, but the leads or the users they got were perfect. It was the cool kids of the university, gender balanced, and they did that they went from college to college with that strategy, command and conquer strategy, right? And we did something similar with activations within the community. And that turned out great as well. Like we really started, larger scale events with Nakhil and Demak through that, which was also a nice impact.
It's heavy lifting though, isn't it, Rene? Like two founders, 100 communities, and you still have to build the tech and get the product right. So how many hours were you out picking up trash and posting?
Oh gosh, that was so it was quite fun actually. So we'd wake up early morning to avoid the heat, and I think we did it in around 30 communities, and every time it was maybe an hour, 2 hours cleaning up trash. And then we did subsequent trash cleanups where we, got a couple of neighbors together and we organized them on our application actually. But I can't, but yeah, 30 times 2 plus extra. So we did go do a lot, yeah.
And if it works, is it something that you continue, and as your team grows, you have other people to do those type of things?
So that was, we still want to do a lot of activations. At the moment, we're not actively doing them because we just stretched a bit thin. We've grown quite well now, and our focus is just to get, to the next stage. We're fundraising as well, right? So the seed stage is our focus. And after that, we actually want to have regular neighborhood meetups, and they can be any flavor. Can be a cleanup, how we started, can be a bingo night, at like a hotel, especially in summer, you can't really do a cleanup. But yeah, regular offline meetups is definitely part of the agenda, and we'll do that with a team.
Okay, fine. Okay, cool. So how many app downloads? What's the monthly active users you have now?
So we currently have 23,000 verified users. So we have a verification process where a user has to verify their location. And this is one of the value adds that, for example, WhatsApp or Facebook groups don't have. You have to verify via geolocation or Makani number or a utility document to sign up. So yeah, we're
Why is that important?
To avoid spam and make sure the neighbors are verified. And that adds that layer of trust within the community.
So people aren't just trying to pretend to chat to people in a neighborhood they don't belong to.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, I think the majority of Facebook groups that aren't well managed, they're full of, let's say, movers and packers, disallowed salespeople, or so on and so on.
Yeah, fair enough. And so 23,000, how active are those people?
Super active. So we get a very important metric that you look at when you've got a network-based product is how many of the active users return and use the app on a weekly basis, and that's called stickiness. Our stickiness is between 50 to 60%. So 60 to 50% of them of the active users return on a weekly basis, and then you can go down. Okay, how many of the weekly active users use it on a daily basis? I think that's around 30 to 40%. But those are really the two metrics that we're focusing on during the pre-seed. Our North Star metrics was the retention rate and the stickiness. And that proved to us, okay, this is a product that we can grow. And
is it free for them to use? How do you commercialize the app?
The app is free to use for all the residents. How we commercialize the application is through our B2B model, where we give businesses geo-targeted marketing. So at the moment, digital marketing, as I'm sure you also know, is extremely expensive, and it's getting also more inefficient because advertisers cannot rely on third-party data anymore. Now, I'm not going to go into the technical aspect of it, but yeah, traditionally, Facebook, Google, those kind of advertisers, they collect your data from all apps to create a profile about you and then target you. That's no longer the case, especially with iOS. But with Hayi, the neighborhood and the location data is part of the application. When you're signing up to your building, you're signing up to your neighborhood, and that's why we don't rely on third-party data. And when a cafe or a gym just wants to advertise to a couple of buildings around them, let's say 3 buildings around them, we can give them that advertising space. So from both sides, we get higher quality leads for the customers, especially the small local businesses. And from a user perspective, they're seeing more relevant ads. Those are ads and offers that are directly around them.
And so what is the ad unit that they're buying? Is it a native ad unit? Like, is it, the way Google have their PPC, which is just text, or is it a display ad, or is it a feed post, a self-serve platform in the future like Facebook? What's the ad unit?
So at the moment, it's just like a sponsored post, right? So it's very, very simple at this stage. It's an image, it's a call to action, a bit of text information, and that call to action links to, let's say, the App Store, if an app is advertising, or payment gateway websites, anything somebody would want to lead the user to is linked to the post.
And how do you sell it? Is it a CPM or?
So no, we have we're selling it on a subscription basis. Now down the line, we'll be having more of a sophisticated ad manager, but at the moment, businesses buy a monthly or an annual subscription to have access to the neighbors that are meaningful to them. Either one neighborhood, a couple of neighborhoods, a cluster, or the entire city, which is more interesting to corporates.
Okay. So what's the most active community you have?
I would say JVC. JVC that's where I lived for a while. So JVC was our main community, and that surrounding area. So JVT, Sports City as well, but JVC I would say is the one we're focusing on most.
And how many people live in total JVC?
Oof. So I think the numbers, they keep changing because
Yeah.
JVC grows so quickly. But I've heard 50,000, I've heard 100,000, I've heard very, very varying numbers.
Yeah.
But I think around between 50 and 100,000. You might
I
know
don't
better
know.
than
Yeah.
I do. But it's growing a lot, and you see construction every day. So it's quite a chunk.
Okay, so say there's 50,000 people, 10% use the Hayi app, 5,000, and I'm a local restaurant, and I know that I can target these people for a year. What's the subscription price?
So that really varies. So it varies at the moment. It depends also because we have two packages. One is the actual digital ads, the targeted sponsored post, and the other thing is having a business profile. Excuse me, a business profile where a business is visible with all its information, its image, its logo, and also the offers that they're offering. So those are two packages. Depending on the combination of what they want, the price differs, and also if they just want one neighborhood, multiple neighborhoods, or citywide. So if I remember correctly, the current rate we just launched it in February, so we're still adjusting the price, but it's for citywide, it's around 10,000 if you're going for the maximum package.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get at, like, is the you're raising now, you're sort of, is this what will be appealing to investors, the revenue, or do Nextdoor and others have different revenue streams as well?
It's I love that question because this kind of app is not a one utility app, so you really can diversify in a lot of ways. Nextdoor's revenue model is primarily ad based, but there are different styles of it, right? Different channels. Like I said just now, we have the ads, we call digital ads, targeted digital ads, and local offers, which is a business page, and the offers, both are on a subscription basis. And Nextdoor has a very similar model. So you have targeted ads, and then you have local deals. That's what they call it. Now it's like a cost per click as well for Nextdoor. We have a subscription based, but purely just because in the beginning that's a much easier and more reliable way of monetizing. And it's just also not as tech heavy because ad managers are quite, you need some time to develop one properly. And that's why we've got our CTO, who's an ad tech specialist.
And from I get that people in a local community, ads could be interesting because you're finding out what's happening in the local community. But of course, that's not the only reason people would use the app. There's other utility things. There's more natural things. Is the sickeness part, is there a chat feature to connect to your neighbors? And, you brought up the point of Tinder, and one of the things that they have, they're more successful if you stay single. Yeah. So that's
the dilemma.
Yeah. So they're more successful if you keep using the app. Yeah. Whereas in your point of view, what's if people are chatting to each other, if they're meeting neighbors, like what's the kind of goal? What do you kind of keep wanting them to come back for?
That's a great point. And I loved you brought that up. That's the primarily dilemma of a dating app. If they do well, they're going to churn their user base. But in the neighborhood app model, like, I don't think we have that problem because neighbors, you don't just choose one neighbor. I think you can be neighbors with a lot of people. But the reason people come back so often. So I'd like to refer to the topics that get posted. Number one is recommendations. They're actually asking for or giving recommendations around the area. Like, okay, what's the nursery you recommend nearby? Are there any cafes that have good coffee shops, gyms, you name it? That's the primary use case. The secondary is really to meet people, right? It's always great when I speak to some of the users. I've always strike up a conversation. I message them, be like, hey, look, let's go for a coffee. I'd like to hear your experience on Hayi. And it's amazing to see when somebody actually makes an offline meeting, right? An offline connection. One of our users said that, Hayi changed their life, and now they wake up every day 6 a.m. to go running with a buddy next door that they didn't know and they didn't have the motivation before. Or now they've started a business and they've connected with, a marketing consultant that lives right next door to them. So when we add real value to somebody's life, in an offline way, that's when we say, okay, this is what we made the app for. But what keeps people coming is, I think, also like a FOMO element. People want to know what's happening around them. So I think that's also an attribution to the high retention and high stickiness.
Okay, interesting. So going back a little bit, so after the pandemic, you're going to be doing a startup. You've raised a pre-seed round. What was the next step? Where did you get the license? And when you're setting up a company like this, what activity do you put it under? What do you call it? Do you call it a social network? Do you get a social network license?
Oh, okay. So yeah, no, we don't have a specific social network license. So we just had an operational company. We're with N5 Tcom. And that was the first thing we did. So even before we got the pre-seed investment, we incorporated. We joined a great incubator here called N5 down in Media City. And then we have to open a bank account, which took some time. So every time I would advise any entrepreneur to really open up a bank account in advance, especially when you get an investment. You don't want to be sitting on checks and waiting for the bank account to open. So just do that in advance. I would advise. Join a nice incubator. There are a lot of good incubators here that are government backed, and they have great networking events as well. And yeah, that's how it went with the licensing. Now you also need a holding company, right? So you've got an operational company, then a holding company, especially when you're getting investors, international investors. And the two main holding jurisdictions for holding companies here in the UAE is ADGM and DIFC. If you're a fintech, you go with DIFC. If you're a normal tech like us, you go to ADGM usually. Fees are really, really low, subsidized, great events. And the ADGM opening the holding company didn't take long at all. That was really, really quick.
And you did that, so you didn't do the sort of BVI Delaware thing?
Oh, those are also, those are also options, but ADGM is for sure the cheapest. Delaware is, I think if you have an American investor, for example, early on board and they will help you with the fees, I'd say you could go ahead with Delaware or Cayman Islands. If you're primarily sourcing from regional VCs, ADGM should be more than enough. Most startups I know are with ADGM.
But your original focus is this region, and were your first investors from this region or a mix?
Yes, so it was just from this region. So our aim was always, okay, we saw UAE as a great springboard, and we're extremely passionate about Dubai as being our home, and we want to create that smart city vision. But also from like an entrepreneurial and a VC perspective, you need to get a big market. Otherwise, VCs aren't really interested in you. So Saudi Arabia and Egypt are the next main markets we're looking at. And in general, in the startup ecosystem, these are the three main players, because you don't have one big country like the US where the US is enough. You need those three markets. And during our pre-seed, we wanted to be quite strategic about it. So we got a local institutional investor in the UAE, then a Saudi angel investor, and then a government-backed investor actually in Cairo. So Falak Startups is the incubator arm or the early stage arm of Egypt Ventures. Honestly, fantastic accelerator / VC. They helped us in Egypt so much. So big shout out to the Falak Startups team in Cairo. But yeah, I appreciate good accelerator programs, and when you're part of it, it's great.
It sounds like you were well received with your idea in the startup community. When you're pitching now for, say, a seed round, what's the appetite at the moment? What's the current zeitgeist or climate around investing? And is it a harder sell to sell social networks? Do you have to tag Web3 on the back of it, or AI, or because I'm joking in a way, because lots of people are just doing that to get valuations higher. They're the buzzwords, right? But like social networks were sort of buzzy 15 years ago. Like, how's the pitch going down these days?
Yeah, I think it's no secret that in general, the tech ecosystem, the economy in general is a little bit hesitant, but specifically tech with everything that's happened. SVB now recently as well. So I think in general, it's a bit difficult for startups to fundraise. In our case, it's going well. We've got some VC investment, VC commitments, which is great. We're still working on the round. But if you take social networks specifically, like the VC, the tech ecosystem is very trend driven, right? AI is the big thing now. I have a really good friend who's got an AI startup, and just after ChatGPT, boom, closed the round. Was fundraising for a couple of months, nothing, then closed the round immediately, just because okay, ChatGPT, okay, cool, awesome, I'll invest. But let's take social networks for example. I think There is a theory that there's technological bundling and unbundling in any innovation ecosystem. And if we take the social networking space specifically, Facebook undoubtedly bundled everything social networking related, right? You've got the forum based aspect to it, the marketplace, the entertainment aspect, right? Kitten videos, events, meetups, really everything social networking related, but so often that, if you focus on so many things at the same time, you're not really going to fulfill one need really, really well. I think quite recently we've been seeing successful niche social networks popping up. One, I think the best example would be TikTok. They took the social media, the entertainment element of Facebook and perfected it, right? There's nothing more entertaining than TikTok. Much more entertaining than Facebook. And then the groups feature, which is primarily used for location, right? Geolocation, neighborhood groups. Nextdoor took that feature and perfected it, right? Nextdoor in the US had a proper verification system, really customized it to the neighborhood ecosystem, gave SMEs a place, and so on and so on. So I think we are in a time where investors are seeing that. Oh, and then you've got other small ones like Be Real. I don't know if you've heard of Be Real. It's just like a Gen Z snap the moment thing. Now the value proposition I'm not quite sure of, but it's become very popular. So it's, I think it's,
I get your point on social networks, and there's in running community, there's Strava and there's niche things, but I think the question and the pushback on that is it a feature or is it a platform? Because some of these things that break away and just create a feature, then they fail to create the network effects of platforms. Like Be Real is a good example. It's just a feature, right? Like TikTok added that feature on the app, or Snapchat had stories, and then Instagram added stories because it was a feature. There's no moat around it. It's not in and itself a platform. And I know you're not just building a feature, but I guess the point you were making is that niche can work now as social networking becomes more mature.
I think the most important thing is, and that applies to the entire startup ecosystem, when you're building a startup, when you're building a product, be very clear on the problem you're solving, like almost to a philosophical level. And that's not that easy most of the time. So if you think about, okay, what problem is Hayi solving, right? And I think that's when the feature gets distinct from, an actual product. Be like Hayi's problem, or the problem that we're solving, is very simply put information exchange within the local community, within a geographic confine. And that's a problem where you can build a solution and you can build features around it. Just like LinkedIn. What is LinkedIn actually doing? LinkedIn is solving the problem of information exchange within a professional community. Facebook is solving the problem of information exchange within a friendship community. What is Be Real doing, right? What's the problem they're solving? I don't think I'm the one to answer it. Maybe the founders will. But I think you get my point, right? So, and that should also always be the driving question for when you're developing the product. How do you improve information exchange within the community? How do you make it faster? How do you make it more relevant? So things like notification systems and spam control mechanisms is things we really, really worked on. And that's how we improved our retention rate. But yeah, I think that's the most important thing, is be clear about the problem that you're solving down to the most simplest level.
A couple of things that people criticize of social networking is brand safety, negativity around society and hate speech and a lot of things like that. I won't focus on that side, but I prefer really to focus on the other part, which is the creator economy and the creators, the people driving the retention on these platforms feel as if they haven't got their lion's share of, the platforms have made a lot of the profits. When you were describing, behavior on Hayi earlier, you mentioned that people would post what's happening and they would post things. Do you feel like you need to incentivize them now or in the future?
I think that's a great point. I think, especially when you take stuff like YouTube or Twitch, I think is one of the biggest ones, where there really is just like a very top, like 1% of the creators that really benefit from it. And obviously the platform itself. I actually so we were part of the Taqaddam accelerator program in Saudi Arabia, fantastic accelerator, one of the best we were part of. And I met amazing startups then. One of them was also a social network that was tackling exactly this problem. I'm not going to go into depth of it, but it's the platform's called Heroes, and they are a gaming short clip streaming platform. And they really saw a problem with, the users, the audience is kind of, and the small creators are left out of that value chain. So how do we incentivize them? And then they incorporated in a technical way, and I'm not going to go into details with it, but ways for users to get rewarded by just being on the platform. Now, there are a couple of things we're also looking at and considering, still in the blueprint stage, but at the moment, for the numbers that we have, we don't have to incentivize them. So people do come out whenever they have a question, whenever they want to do something, they'll post or they'll create something, right? Like a content. And then you have the more passive users that just open it daily and scroll through and see, okay, what's happening. I think today, there was what I saw on the application is there was like hail, right? So somebody posted, okay, watch out, guys, there's hail, and a picture of the hailstone. So those are the things, the more passive users look for, and a lot of neighbors just want to help neighbors, right?
So what, Rene? So Next Door, you mentioned they're listed. Is it still a zero-sum game in social networking? Do you still have to be the biggest neighborhood hub in the world, or is there a case of in this region, say 20% of the UAE population, say 2 million people use your app here, it's a big number, and then similar in Saudi and Egypt, or even less, say 1 million in each of these markets. Is that enough? Would that satisfy you? Is that enough to deem this a success in 10 years' time?
So we want to be more than just 2 million in each of those markets. So we're targeting to have high penetration rate in all these three markets. That's our main game. And going back to the model of social networking, it's first of all, it's a great mode, right? If you have that network and you have that network effect, it's very difficult to replicate or come in, because people are going to stay where the most people are. That's the essence of network effect. So from an investment point of view, that's quite attractive. There's a mode. You can't come in with, let's say in the SaaS industry, with just a cheaper product and say, hey, look, we're charging one dirham less, and then they'll bounce. That doesn't really work with social networking. You need a product that retains the users. You grow that product, and when you have that user base, you're typically at least safe to some extent, right?
Yeah.
And now coming to your next question, Next Door is primarily focused on the Western market, so we really want to focus on the MENA region. And down the line, that could be a potential exit opportunity, right? Another social network or other big tech that's interested in having a MENA entrance in whatever way, through like a merger and acquisition.
Interesting. And Rene, when we spoke before, another tactic that you use, and obviously it's a benefit for property developers that really focus on livability. They're building cities within cities, and having an app like this ready-made is really attractive to them. So you're strategically partnering with lots of development companies.
Yes, so we're definitely. So down from the building manager to the larger ones take a little bit more time, but we were actually recently part of the Emar Innovation Challenge. So we were one of the finalists for the Emar Innovation Challenge. Fantastic program, met some great startups. And that's when we, got to, speak to the heads of the various departments. And now we're in talks to see how we can synergize partnership in some way.
Okay, great. And finally, we always ask on this podcast, you obviously grew up here. The Middle East is often said as an emerging market. Are you optimistic about the region for the future? Do you think it's a market that will emerge?
No, definitely. So I'm immensely patriotic, even though I'm not Emirati, but I feel that way about Dubai, UAE. I think what's happening in Saudi is amazing as well. I think it's going to make the Saudi economy quite recession-proof, and the more the Saudi economy grows and attracts foreign talent, I think UAE can only benefit from that. So I have very, very strong confidence in the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt as well. They having a bit of a currency issues, but kind of that fixes itself usually down the line. I think there are a lot of emerging markets under a bit of stress. But what I love about the UAE, and now as an extension of that, the GCC and and Saudi Arabia, is the speed at which they make decisions. I see that as a tech entrepreneur myself, that the government is really behind innovation, behind tech. Every year when you live in the UAE, you don't know what's going to happen next year, right? You're always excited and looking forward to something else. Me being half German, very used to bureaucracy in Germany, I think in general in Europe, in Ireland as well. The government's mainly just, fighting over basic things, solving problems like building an airport or something, and that takes ages. The quickness of decision making is fantastic here, and the long-term vision behind it is amazing. And you don't really get that in, let's say, Europe. No government looks 30 years into the future, but in Dubai they do.
Wow. Okay. Great note to finish on. Thanks very much for sharing the story of Hayi, and we'll follow it in the future.
Thank you so much, Rich. Awesome. It was great to be here.
Thanks a lot. That was really interesting. Rene and I sat down at STEP conference this year. We had a long chat, and then it was good to take it to the podcast. There's similar companies like this that we've interviewed over the years on Dubai Works. One is called My Community, and then another one is called Ask Who. If you're interested in this type of social networking and community-based companies in the region. Thank you to everyone who helped put into this show together. Ali Khalil and Ani Baba in the studio, and Shahir Al-Kindi, who works on the organization of the guests and the producing the show, and then also the team who work on distribution, so Lana and Fadwa in our team in Egypt, and also the team on Love in Dubai who put this article about the show up every week. Annika usually does that in Dubai. So thank you. It's a big team helping get this out. I was told yesterday there was 13,000 listens for the month of March, which is great. The numbers keep going up on Dubai Works, and I really appreciate you all for listening. If you are, do like, comment, subscribe on any of the platforms that you're on. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts, or push it out on Spotify, Angami, Podio, wherever you listen. It is available in video format on smart TV devices. There's a subscription there, but you can get a free trial. Download the Smashy TV app. Thank you, and we'll be back next week at 11 o'clock on Friday with a new episode.
This show is brought to you by the Augustus Media Podcast Network. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.